It is December 29th, 2025. I am Grantham Taylor Hughes for my show, The Grantham Taylor Hughes Show, with my guest hosts, the Wright brothers on the left and Steve Hall. And we know the Wright brothers actually instituted aviation back in the day. They made the first airplane. How did you guys do that? Just for the record, they're not really the original Wright brothers, and I have no idea what their name is. But I know it's Vicky and Tony. All right, so we do a lot of things on this call. And I've had some breakthroughs on my yantra work this week. We can talk about that. I'm on phase 6. But I get to Roy pretty quickly, which is the Rings of Infinity. If you look at Rings of Infinity, it's actually an infinity sign, or what is known as a Mobius strip. So I'm at the Mobius strip quite regularly now, which it's very exciting work. But phase 6 is TUP. You have to be very TUP to get there. That's the joke about TUP, TP, twin portals. And I got there regularly on Tuesday, but I didn't sustain TUP. And then this week I only got to it one more time. But it's there. The code, for everybody's knowledge, is we're using light to create everything, and from our eyes. The essence of man is light and sound. So we're using the light to see things exoterically. Yantra is important to talk about. It really is, because for people to get this, a lot of this work is pioneering work, and it's some guesswork involved with it. But we do know the outcome is actually real, because there have been people that have experienced eyesight movement into the portals. So we know people that actually have done that. But we haven't done it yet. The people that actually did it ran off and got frightened about the whole thing and didn't want to really get involved with it back. This is a long time ago, about 20 years ago. When I explained it to the gentleman what took place, he said, "I don't want to talk about that ever again." I go, "Okay, that's fine." I don't know why he was frightened about it. It was a clear explanation. People are really sensitive, and I respect that. At least we know that it actually exists. Okay, and people would say, "Why are you bothering with this?" Well, the key to the whole thing was when my son was knee-high to a bullfrog, like 6 years old, he said, "Daddy, I see two worlds." And that planted a seed with me, and I didn't really understand it at that time, so I couldn't reinforce it with my son. And so later on, we talked about it, and voila, there is a factor of it does exist, and we call it eyesight travel. We're moving with our eyes. Even in the physical plane, we have to look at something before we move our physical body. You know what I mean? We have to look over at the door to walk out the door. So we're actually traveling with our eyes, even physically. But people don't think about that, see? This is very important, because the utility of eye work is really in an infant stage in our development as human beings on Earth. I mean, people don't go into the nuances of this. It's very important. I've been going through some really interesting things and explanations and what have you. We have a conference call on Sundays, international conference call. And I think we talked about the center not drawing things to you, but you are the creator from the center. Like you're flowing out from your center in the law of assumption that I am rich, I am wealthy, I'm healthy, all these things about the I am. But that means you're in the center, you're the creator, and not things coming to you. So I'm trying to remain consistent with the law of assumption, because the law of assumption is very important as the creator. So it's the same idea that when we're doing the yantra work, if we're the creator in the center, we're trying to get to the center to have the array of the windows, the doorways kind of flying around us in an oval shape, spinning around you vertically and horizontally. But I think it might go like a gyroscope. Like it might be moving in all sorts of directions like this, but it still maintains the 144 portals. That would be a gyroscoping type thing. But remember, there's 72 windows on the parallel, and there's 72 on the vertical in front of you. When you look in the mirror, you only have 4 sides. There's no diagonal in a mirror. You can't get a diagonal in a mirror. You can only get north, south, east, and west.
What you've just said about that the square mirrors, in fact, they have curves in them. sort of goes away to showing that Einstein's curved space was right, that things are curved. So if we started on what we thought was a straight line, eventually we'd come back to ourselves.
Yeah, curved space is the truism because it's a spiral. It's spinning in space. So, yeah, Einstein was correct about curved space, and that's important. Even though we've known that for centuries, we didn't need Einstein to get in there. E equals mc squared, which is mainly or just mathematics, repeatable. But that mathematics formula was as big as a chalkboard, like 17 feet wide. That math is huge, and so when they repeated that, he won the Nobel Prize and all that business. And I don't really care about that because nuanced stuff is unimportant because they're doing nuances of portal existence in one portal. I'm accommodating them in my portal; they're accommodating me in their portal. And what are we doing? Nothing. You see what I mean? They're not getting back to the array. They're not getting back to Potica. We're doing the most important work right now in the world today that we're doing. And we've got about 2 people watching it. Well, actually 3 people because you're watching it now. Or actually 4 people if you count me. You see what I mean? So we're actually doing the most important work ever in this particular lifetime to explain to people to give freedom to be able to travel properly. And they're not doing that. See, they're all caught up and everyone's stuck in this portal. Or they're stuck without explanation. See, they're in Potica, but they don't know how to explain where they are. See, isn't that interesting?
And when we disappear, they'll wonder where we've gone. How
that's
did you
right.
do that?
Yeah, how did that happen? You disappeared. And see, they don't know how they did it. See, they don't know they're converging and diverging in the universe, you see, or reverging. Sorry, it's revergence, not convergence. You know, I try to get away from the revergence thing, but it keeps coming back to me going, that's wrong. But then it's very complex. I mean, it's already seemingly complex what we're talking about. But, that just adds a huge dimension of complexity to revergence because you guys don't get revergence. Every time I talk about revergence, you're going, I have no idea what he's talking about. Right? Steve, you don't get revergence. I know you go to sleep when I start talking about revergence. Right?
I do. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
I would like to introduce the topic of ethics behind the time travel.
Oh, ethics.
Time travel presents itself as a dystopia. There's always a negative scenario, the worst scenario, so to speak. Science fiction stories go that step further. What if something goes wrong? What if this is turned the wrong way around?
So my opinion is you're a creator, you can do what you want. That's my answer to it, real simple. And if it crosses over into somebody's problem, well, you can get into a war, you can get some infantry together and some military together, and you can, whoever gets the biggest military usually wins the war, right?
So the reason for our living is the realization of our existence. At the same time, other people will say, what really matters is the survival. The survival is so ingrained within us on this earthly plane. The survival is the saying.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Why people will be time travel? Oh, because they would like to survive. So they would like to move from the congested war area to a peaceful area. That could be one thing, because they like to improve their personal circumstances or opportunities in life. That's why they would like to move. We saw the other day this film about time traveling. It was a young boy who discovered by chance that actually he's quite capable of teletransporting. To survive, he had to obtain some cash. So he went to the bank, he robbed the bank, he brought the money from the bank. So it poses existential question. Will the skill tempt some youngsters to commit an offence, criminal offence, like taking the money from the bank?
The thing is that it's a human condition again, where you're talking there about material value. So if money's gone, if you rob a bank, that money's gone. It's a human factor. So in reality, what we talk about is no materialism, because there's nothing really. There's no time.
However, in terms of the manifestation, then we're dealing with a something. It's nothing is something and something is nothing. It gets to be philosophical. You see what I mean? Actually, the ethical part is not a concern to me, because when you're the creator and we're talking to ethical people, really, I consider you people extremely ethical because I know you well. So if we're dealing with ethical people, and initially, I'm not concerned about what the masses are going to do with it, because if anything, it's going to be hard for them to do this, because even in the beginning, it seems to be elude people's attention level. You see what I mean? We're talking about eyesight travel and eyesight, but people were also dealing with people's attention level. You know, attention of most people is that of a gnat. I'd rather talk to a gnat than most human beings. They have a better attention level. Mr. Gnat, what did you say there? I said hello. Okay, so
I don't think people would cause any problems because they have enough drama in this world. So they'd see it as an escape where they can have a bit of peace and quiet,
yeah.
you know, and some normality, a bit of harmony, if you will.
And see, the other point is that it's not a matter of doing it, it's a matter of a analysis ahead of time. But what I'm talking about is the truth of a human being's ability, so you should have that ability. You see, I don't care if it's a concern about somebody else, because we're entitled to have our abilities and powers, but see, that's the reason why these things aren't done, because people get concerned ahead of time and do some analysis that's paralysis. Remember, I was asking you, Tony, well, how do we know where we are when we go to another portal? Well, it's right there in the explanation of the acronym of portals of travel in the knowingness arena, because we'll know where we are. Remember how we always talk about we're not really on a subject when we do our podcast. We just wing it, right? We become channels for spirit, so to speak. And then, see, so the key, same thing I did, is if you go into a portal, you'll know where you are, you'll know what you're supposed to be doing, see? But right now, we're speculating about that whole thing, about time continuum and messing with the time track and all that business. That shouldn't be a concern for being the creator. We're talking about giving individual portal travel back to a person, which you're entitled to have that. So if you're the creator, you can do whatever you want with the timeline. You see what I mean? So there's total freedom in this whole thing. And we haven't gotten back there, see. I think like we said, we did it 5 million years ago, but we haven't gotten there so far because it's probably been that long since we did it. So that's why I think why it's taking so long. We're trying to get through the subterfuge of all the stuff from the remplissage from 5 million years. Right now, you could say you're stuck in a portal because we haven't gotten to Patica, but because I've revealed Patica, you're really in Patica, but then we're not really practicing it because we're speculating about it presently. See, so that's the interesting part about the truth of being in Patica, that everybody's in, but they're not utilizing the instrument, or they've forgotten how to do it, and we're trying to help them to remember how to utilize Patica. But then, see, the other part of this, which I've brought up a little bit, but I don't think we've done it on the podcast, is when you're in the center in Patica, why bother going into the portals? Because it's beautiful, it's like an idyllic garden, or like we showed that picture of that big rays and everything. It's probably moving in a gyroscoping type thing, and it's probably incredibly beautiful to be in the center. See, so why are we even bothering going into a portal? But now that we're in this convergent portal, we're wondering, how do we get back to Patica? But see, we're playing, your guys are playing a game with me, and I'm playing a game too, because we're really there, but we want attention from each other. I want your attention. Please give me attention.
You know how I see it, Grantham?
Thank you.
I see it now as my essence knows. It knows all these things, my essence.
Correct.
So I am relearning how to connect to my essence to get these things back that I should
Right, or just that you want attention from Vicky, Steve, and myself. Tony wants it. We got to give Tony attention. Let's look at Tony. Let's look at him.
You know what that does? It proves to me I'm real.
Feel like people smoke because they want to color their breath. I'm actually breathing, so let's put some smoke on to prove that it exists, right? Yeah, go ahead, Steve-O.
It's a figment of Grantham's imagination. don't I? That's all you are.
Yes.
That's right. You're a fig of my imagination. A fig. Because logic is a failure, we're going to run into things all the time that would be controversial. To talk about it, to get into a compromise on what's a common element of the logic, you see, because that's how we make society work. We have to be able to get to a common ground with things. Otherwise, we have nothing. See, so that's the manifestation part of it. And because we're manifest, we're four human beings here. There's a definite manifestation there, and we would fight for that manifestation. If somebody says, "Oh, you don't really exist," that's silly, isn't it? Yeah, real silly. I was on a radio show years ago, and I was talking to the host that was interviewing me, and she was talking about that too, about illusion and existence. I said, if somebody came in this room and said we didn't exist, would you fight tooth and nail and say, yes, I do exist? She said, yes. I said, well, that's what it's really about, existence. You know, we're not illusions. We actually are tangible because we can see that tangibility, even though it's somewhat controversial in being an illusion, but a powerful illusion. You see what I mean? It's a very powerful illusion to be able to see each other, right, in a biological form. What do? Well, we want to sustain that. That's why we talk about mortality, proper mortality, sustain it for a long time. Why not? It's a lot of fun. We have a lot of work to do. There's a tremendous amount of work to be done, just like Vicky's golden age. We call it the golden age, which is coming up soon, which is a very exciting time. Talking about the three ruinations. We give back our native language, we give back our proper mortality, and we give back our travel ability. There's no reason why we shouldn't have that. And so people's concerned, they over intellectualize about things, that we can just back them up on my cliff, and as they're standing on the edge, and we'll actually take one more step backwards, and they go over my cliff, Grantham's cliff, and they go, ah! I said, don't worry on the way down. It's okay, because when you hit the sides, it's made out of what? Butter. Yeah.
On the subject of time travel are the timelines, you know. So we perceive reality as far as past, present and future as the eternal now. So would that be a magnified vision of now being from above the space, like a bigger pattern of now? Would that imply the future?
It was a no, a gong sound. So there is no now, because it's a sound of the gong. So we got rid of that. We got rid of the eternal now. But we are in the present, eternal present. So that means, well, we just had Christmas. Didn't we get some presents on Christmas? The eternal present. So we eternally get presents. That's really cool. We're in the eternal present. We're constantly getting presents. I like that. That's really nice. So being in the middle or being in the center, it's probably better to say the center than now or present or whatever. So when you're in the center, it's not really a timeline. You're just in the center. Let's go back to the basis of reality. We're in duration. We're not in time. There's existence that's passing, as we said, centripetally and centrifugally. Everything's spinning and moving. It's not a time continuum. We just started doing that by making clocks and measuring the facets of time. We started measuring it that way. And they call the watches, which I call glances, they call that a Swiss confidence trick, because the Swiss started measuring all these things with clocks. So they started measuring duration, which is really impossible to do, but we did it in increments and digitization and all that business. Because it's really all analog and all energy spinning, see. So eliminate the measurement, which is time, because time doesn't really exist other than the measurement of time. So now you're in duration. So each one has an individual duration. So if we get into the explanation of the proper way of things, then there is no issue of time continuum, because there's no issue of measurement anyway. See, so we have to redefine are parameters of the universe, really, when you get right down to it. And that's what we're doing. We're giving proper truth of all this business called time and mind and all that business, this analytical nonsense which doesn't exist, because we know when we get to speaking in tongues. And by the way, that reminds me. And I heard that Grantham Taylor Hughes, there's a rumor, speaks in tongues. Is that true? Do we know who started that rumor? Well, I started it. Okay. So don't be concerned about time. I'm not concerned about it because it doesn't really exist. It's just measuring duration. I was thinking about that the other day, about being still, like you're supposedly still in the middle. Stillness is a very comforting type thing. But ultimately, we're not really still. We're just in a effortless concept of tranquility. Remember, there's no end to tranquility. So we can always step up tranquility. So there's actually motion in tranquility. So you can appreciate that's a real paradox, see, because it's not no end to that. Remember we talked about azaraxia, which is beyond tranquility. My Tibetan Lama teacher said the spirit was beyond tranquility because the constant state is spinning, see. So there's no end to this, see, and that's the beauty of the whole thing. However, we can maintain control by being in the center. And all the religions talk about the eternal soul, right? So where is soul? Well, soul's in the center, but it has to learn that it's in the center and learn about Padaka, see? Portals of travel in the knowingness arena. So once we allow people to get there or explain where they are, I mean, they're already doing this, but they don't really know where they are in the explanation, because we need to get to create a method for those who haven't remembered or those who don't know. They can't explain their individuality. They can't explain their identity. They can't explain where they are. So we're giving a concrete explanation, and it's not really coming down on our head, the concrete. Watch out for that concrete. It's going to put a dent on us. Anyway, so you see that you can go both ways with it. You can come from the center to do it, or you can come from the centrifugal energy to get to the center. You can come at it at both directions. We're doing some pretty good work today. You guys are dragging it out of me. I appreciate that. So the issue is still, being the creator, you're allowed to monkey around with the time. We're monkeying around with your timeline anyway, where you are presently. You see what I mean? Wherever you are now, they talk about messing with the time continuum, that type of thing. But that's a collective idea, a collective time continuum. If you're the creator, it doesn't matter what they're creating too. They're messing with their time continuum. Look, you're disturbing your time continuum now. Where you are right now, you're creating time and moving around, and your cells are moving and stuff. So that's monkeying around with the time continuum. I wouldn't be worried about all that. I mean, people get worried about a lot of things, but they just should, take a nap or something. It's probably best to go to sleep or walk away.
If we think about reincarnation, which we all believe in, then our essence is eternal, and we're just having duration of being one form that's moving into another form. So that's what we're experiencing.
That's right.
Qu'est-ce que l'amour? Une jolie mélodie.
And then see what we're doing and dealing with Padaka, and then we're talking about, okay, incarnations and stuff. See, this gets into some pretty heavy, deep stuff. They would call it deep. That's deep, right? But I think it's very superficial, in my opinion. It's just,
Yes.
It should be discussed and go into the nuances of the whole thing. But then when we talk about esoteric views of things, or going into higher dimensions, how do you do that if you're closing your eyes? You see what I mean? As you brought up, Vicky, many moons ago, we were talking about what's karma on the higher dimension. We talk about dharma. When you go past a certain level, it turns into dharma, a karmaless state, right? You asked a really key question about that, which I really appreciate your questions. The cogency is really good. So what we did was we called dharma a different type of karma. There's action and reaction. It doesn't become a sustenance of a karmic bundle. In other words, you don't sustain the karma. Dharma is in a state of causation of practice. Causation of practice. Boy, that's good. That's brand new today. Too. That's a brand new phrase. Sustaining action in a different way, you see. So again, is there action in a higher dimension? My teachers, my mentors were always saying there's nothing there, like matter, energy, space, and time that Scientology gets into all the time. See, in my opinion, some of my teachers talking about none of that exists in the higher dimensions, but then they get into nothing. What's nothing and everything? And we were talking yesterday about how do you do nothing? Try to do nothing. Try to be totally still. There's always some motion and movement that we have. But remember we talked about God consciousness that people can actually gain, but they become totally still, which is pretty incredible. But you can't sustain that. See, and they say, why can't I sustain it? But then you'd be the one true God. We know that's ridiculous because we're here, right here, all four of us, right? So that becomes ridiculous. If you're one true God, then nothing exists around you. See, so all these things get into some really interesting concepts and ideas that we can explore. That's what it's about. Conversations about exploration and continuing the exploration, because that's, if we're eternal, we can do that till we pass out and fall asleep, thank goodness. And that's what the time duration that we have about the physical body can only do so much, and we become tired and fall asleep, which is a very good thing, because we would burn out the physical body if we were constantly playing the flute, right? We were playing the instrument. So we're actually a musical instrument, but you can't play it constantly. You'll wear out the instrument, see? If you play the violin constantly, the wood would break apart and splinter everywhere and stuff. You have to stop once in a while. You see what I mean? So that's, yes, go ahead, Vicky.
In physics, there's a phenomena of entropy.
I think consciousness is syntropy. Like there's no entropy in the center. Like it's just talking about pure energy with no friction. Because entropy is just when you institute an instrument and it's creating an exhaust. Okay? When you create a machine, that's what entropy is. The faster that it goes, it creates more exhaust. We're in syntropy, which means a synthesis of entropy. There's no motion in there. But there is, see, that's the nuance of the whole thing. There's motion, but it's subtle. Subtlety of non-measurement, see? And there you go. That's why logic is a failure, because we can continue on getting this tremendous wisdom, and then it just runs out when I do this. You do that in public, and people go, oh yeah, I've often understood that concept. I've often heard that. That's really wonderful. Yeah, I agree with that completely. You see what I mean? People aren't paying attention.
And so do I.
Thank you very much, Tony. I appreciate that. I can count on you. These other two, these intellectuals are going, what is he talking about? I have no idea what it is. Yeah, there you go. Thank you. Appreciate that. Yours sounds a little Chinese, too. All these Chinese people in past lives. So my opinion is, I'm doing this. I was born to do this. I really believe that, because it started out when I was younger, but we didn't have the methodology we have today, which is pretty exciting when you think about it. But there are a lot of things that need to be talked about. We're just barely hitting the tip of the iceberg on these things. We're pretty good, but there's still a lot of stuff that needs to be discussed. It's controversial, and I realize that, and it's seemingly complex, but most people get real excited when I start talking about time travel. I said, yeah, but real time travel, I say to them, not just the remplissage nonsense they talk about. And we can go back to what Tony was saying, that in the knowingness arena, that once we get to Padaka, we'll have more knowingness. We'll probably get into some more nuances with it, because we have a limitless time. Right now we have time limits on things. So I think we probably should finish right now.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.